I actually wanted to ask you if that's the reason why you have him there. Do you just stealing his blood little by little
Yeah, yeah,
while
yeah.
you're on
When
tour?
he's asleep, like
We're only a couple of days from the release of The Last Will and Testament, and this wasn't the original release date though, because it was postponed because you wanted to make sure that everything was up to your standards. But apparently there were some problems in the manufacturing process. Could you tell me a little bit what caused the delay?
the delay was caused basically with the different vinyl pressings, like the
Mm.
quality of the sound, because there was some issues with that last time that it got released a bit too early before we got to check everything because yeah, because we're very picky.
Hmm.
And today some masters sometimes maybe not sound so good, but now we made sure that we double checked all the pressings. I mean, it's two different pressings, one for Europe and one for America. So it's two different companies, but they had to send a lot of test pressings back and forth until they got approved. And they did a fantastic job. And we're really happy about how the vinyl sounds now.
I only know anecdotally, for example, how obsessive about vinyl Michael can be. So I can imagine that if he's the one who has to approve how the vinyl is,
Yeah,
that must be really a high level.
it is. It is. I mean, for me, it could be just that the calm parts are a bit noisy. You hear a little background noise, these tiny details like that, and it's not good enough, or it's very delicate. And also test pressings, they could be a bit noisy in the beginning. You have to listen to them a couple of times before the scratches and things like that goes away. So I guess there's a lot of details to consider regarding a thing like that. But
I am curious about how you, as a musician in a band that is as devoted to trying to create music that is composed in a very careful and sometimes elaborate way, and also paying that much attention to how the music is going to end up sounding physically to the fans. I am curious as to then how you process the fact that the vast majority of your music will be listened to through earbuds, transmitting through Bluetooth. You know what I mean? Like whether you feel sometimes that the level of effort aimed at analog kind of appeals to a smaller and smaller market.
yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, today a lot of kids they just listen to music through the little speaker in their cell phone, which is a terrible sound, you know. And it's if you put a lot of effort in, it's like, oh dear. And I guess modern pop mixes they even test mixes through the actual little speaker in the cell phone just because they know a lot of kids just we live in a very fast society. They listen 10 seconds and then they flick to something other. But I would say the people who are interested in us, the Opeth, a lot of them are, I would consider, are respectful and have a bit of the same mindset. And I mean, it's fine that if kids listen to it also, and of course it needs to sound good in that little cell phone speaker. But I guess it's up to each one and everyone, to what they choose to listen to. But
Do you feel frustrated in the sense that you see people who are engaging with your art in a way that doesn't give them everything you wanted to give them?
yeah, a little bit to a certain point. I mean, I guess the Opeth music it's quite complex and it's a lot of layers, and I think you need to be in a calm environment and like really have your attention span on to enjoy it in its the full thing. You know what I mean?
This new album is built around this concept that, as far as I understand, Michael came up with of an old patriarch that dies, and there is a last will and testament. I don't want to spoil the ending, but and I am curious as to how you approach the writing of the music when you already know the story, because normally you write music in the sense that we start with the music and then we add the lyrics, but in this case, even though you don't have the lyrics from the beginning, you know, okay, we need to make a song that reflects this sort of sentiment, and you need to adapt yourself to the story that is being told. Does that change the way in which you approach the songwriting?
Not really. I mean, for me personally, I I really don't in the writing process or I mean, what I write on the album is the guitar solos for this album. I mean, we wrote some songs together, me and Michael, but he Michael writes the majority. It's always been like that in Opeth. But I have a lot of freedom with the solos, and I try to look at them like tiny compositions within the song to a certain extent. Um, but I only focus on the music. Of course, maybe subconsciously I think about if Michael explained, oh, this is about the one of the maids getting murdered in the story or something like that, and or this is in the beginning. Actually, for paragraph one, I was thinking about the lyric in that solo because it's there's some lyric about a spider. Spiders weave in the chorus of the song, and I try to make a little solo that imitates a feel of a spider. So yeah, sometimes.
Have you had this sort of experience before of trying to make this sort of physical connection with what it is that the music is about?
I think it was one song on Pale Communion or Sorceress. Michael asked me, I want you to uh, do a solo that reminds you of something super aggressive like a war. It just be very, very intense. I think it was a solo for Wildflowers, like you're spitting fire, something like that. So sometimes that could be really helpful to have a Michael saying something like that. That will inspire me when I come up with a solo. Definitely. And this time around, it should be something nasty, like you can hear spiders for paragraph one, for instance. And so yeah, I do picture stuff when I come up with solos. Like the last track, "The Story Never Told," for that solo, which is a ballad solo, it ends off the album. I wanted to do an emotional solo because it's about this letter that reveals a total twist of the story of the concept. And I was actually thinking about that to do something kind of sad and emotional. Hopefully it comes across. People will enjoy it. But that was the goal, at least.
What other prog metal albums, or specifically either rock operas or perhaps other concept albums, you were thinking of, or even if you were not thinking about them for this album, concept albums that you are particularly into?
Well, I would say, the King Diamond albums, Them and Abigail. Uh, I listen quite a lot to those. Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. I listened to that a lot when I was young. I love that album. Still great. Of course, you have the classic like The Wall, Pink Floyd. Also actually a Dio album, Magica, album a bit under the radar, but I remember I listened quite a lot to that, and I read the lyrics and everything, and it was exciting.
At the beginning, right before we started recording, you mentioned that tomorrow you have a listening session with fans in Sweden. And I am curious about how you experience that process still, because obviously you are at a level in which there is no question of your talent as a musician. You've already demonstrated that plenty of times, but it's still this new thing that you're showing your audience. You know, you're showing the client, this is the
Yeah,
product. What do you think? Do you still feel nervousness about that? Do you feel like a little butterflies in your stomach about like, oh, these people are gonna listen to it?
yeah, I do. I mean, it's exciting times. First of all, I mean, we have to be happy what we will release. That's the first filter, and we wouldn't release something that we didn't believe in, or we know we did our best at that time to make it as good as possible. That's the first criteria, of course, but it's really up to the listener if it's good or not. The people are interested in us, and it's beyond our powers, and it's interesting to see what people think, even if they think negative stuff. I mean, that negative stuff can be to a certain extent indulging also, but hopefully not. But I mean, tomorrow, for instance, when we have this party, you're gonna have a lot of people who only heard the two tracks we released so far, one and three, and it's gonna be a noise environment. So I know it's not the right environment for them to listen to the album if it's not super loud, because there's gonna be people drinking beers and etc. So I mean, their spontaneous reaction. Well, what I'm trying to say, I think the album needs a few listenings before you get into it, before you get it. At least for me, learning the songs took a lot of listens. So you also have that aspect.
I was at this listening session with Kerry King, and it was bizarre because he was sitting in front of us throughout the entire listening session. So
Looking you in the eye all the time and seeing you're trying to read your reaction. Yeah, that is kind of weird, actually. I mean, listening sessions are. We had it. We did a listening session in Germany with a label, and but we didn't participate in the listening. We were at the pub drinking beers meanwhile. So then we met people afterwards.
this is your first album with Valtteri Väänänen, who's an excellent drummer. I had already played with Paradise Lost, Bottom After Midnight, and some other bands. So he's unquestionably extremely good. He's extremely talented, and he was up to the test technically to play in Opeth. But
Yeah.
he's a couple of decades younger than all of you, I think. So
Mm.
considering that generational difference and that such a big chunk of being in a band is um, interacting with each other and putting up with each other while you're on tour, for example, I am curious about whether at the beginning this generational difference with Valtteri made the communication challenging, or you thought that you needed to approach it differently.
No, he really melted in the band really great, amazingly or surprisingly great, actually. I hear you. You have a good point. And when it comes to music, when we're at the studio, Joachim was one to playing like old Gentle Giant and old prog stuff, and he's more of a like a black metal. He's into black metal, more extreme metal and metal, And but when it comes to playing, understanding the vision when Michael writes a song, because with Opeth there's a lot of dynamics in the drums. You have, of course, the more extreme metal part of it, but you also have a lot of delicate, more jazzy vibes, for instance. A lot of dynamics and small details, and he really nailed all that stuff. He's very picky on each symbols and very delicate when it needs to be. And that was surprising because a lot of extreme metal drummers, they're super good at what they do, but when it comes to playing like a rock groove, like a Phil Rudd AC/DC groove, a lot of people don't have that, like a John Bonham groove or something like that. Um, but he seems to have all the tentacles. And when it comes to the chemistry, luckily enough, we did 3 tours with him before we went into the studio. So that was a good trial by fire. And he, like the old stuff, he just nailed everything. It's very even. Also, when it comes to the more older death metal tracks, when it comes some with the really fast kick drums, like he's so even, and it never raises the tempo. Like it's amazingly. You mean it's more like athletes with the new album. I mean, for him, Valtteri said that this was the most challenging everything he ever put his teeth in. So he practiced like 6 months before we went into the studio because the drums on this new album is really complex. Actually, it's Michael is so picky when he writes music. He can sit with the snare fill with his computer and polish that for a day or something. He won't leave any details behind. And Walter really, you know, respected his vision and just took it to another level, which was amazing to record with him. He's like a machine, and but also since he's younger than us, but we get along really well on the road. We just came back from a 3-week tour in America now, and we have a great time though. Me and Walter, he's younger. He has more energy than us, so we have to suck his blood to get more energy.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you if that's the reason why you have him there. Do you just stealing his blood little by little
Yeah, yeah,
while
yeah.
you're on
When
tour?
he's asleep, like
Yeah,
no,
precisely.
but
Uh,
you can tell, but because when you're in a city, he's always doing sightseeing stuff, and I'm like, I don't have energy for that. I'm just gonna sit play guitar instead. But he's always doing something like want to see touristy stuff, But that's cool. We're trying to keep up. I go more to the gym now with him, so trying to be on level. The race is on. It's a contest now.
Fred, listen, I would love to continue talking with you, but I know that you have another interview now.
Yeah,
So I
my
really,
pleasure.
no, I really appreciate your time. I am going to see you live next year here when you tour in Europe. So I look forward to it. Take care of
Thank
yourself,
you
man.
so much.
Bye bye.
Have a great day.